Loretta Lynn is just as like hardcore as Nas, like in what she's saying in her lyrics about her experience.
Live from the Willie Nelson and Friends Museum Showcase in Nashville, Tennessee. It's Music is Funny. Musicians talking to comedians about music and comedy. With your hosts, Raylan Nelson and Jonathan Bright.
I'm still smoking, I'm so high, I keep toking, I'm drunk, but I'm still drinking too.
Welcome back to Music is Funny. I'm Raylan Nelson.
And I'm Jonathan Bright from the Raylan Nelson Band, back with another great intro.
These are really great intros. Listen, everyone, check me out on the Honeydew podcast.
Just came out, yep.
Just came out yesterday because it is Wednesday at 4:20 right now. It is still up, so go check it out.
Ryan Sickler.
Ryan Sickler.
Probably seen him on
my
the
buddy.
show.
And yeah, if you're a fan of our show, then you already know of Ryan Sickler, and he's the best, so check it out. And his laugh is great. It's my ringtone now.
There you go.
Also, I want you guys to check out History Buffs. It's Pepper Going's new
Oh yeah, Love
podcast.
Pepper. That's a good one.
Phil Cohen, I think his name is. They're both really funny. And also Rough House Friday and Rushmore Podcast.
It's great. All right, this intro is getting very long.
I think there's something else I wanted to say.
Stop.
I'm not bald.
Okay.
I'm not from Fort Lauderdale.
I've got to edit this, so it's really cutting into my day. And just get to it.
And I'm not a trash of a human being.
Oh, that's up for the book.
Josh Adam Meyers.
Yay!
There it is.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Can you guys hear me fine? Because I'm using this little doodad microphone because I just got back into town and I haven't had time to set up all my other podcasting equipment.
No, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Do I look like complete butt cheeks right now? Because it is 99 degrees in New York City.
Oh,
So
It's hot here
hot.
too. Yeah, it's hot here in Nashville. But
Yeah.
we always have really good working AC in the South.
I mean, I do too, I think. I mean, I'm wearing next to nothing right now. Like I literally look like I just got out of hot yoga, and it's just I'm just with my dog. My dog is, yeah, right, don't die on me. There you go. She's okay.
so as long as you have pants on, you don't look like butt cheeks right now.
I have pants on, but I have on I have yoga pants on. So
Nice.
shorts.
Have you done
Yeah.
yoga today?
No, I haven't done anything today. So we did the goddamn comedy jam, that music comedy show that I do at the Comedy Store. We did that at the Comedy Store on Monday night. And then we went to Canners. I took the band out and most of the comics out. We all just, pigged out on, matzo ball soup. We just did because we haven't done it in so long. Like that used to be the routine. We'd always go to Canners, or when we were doing the Roxy, we would go to the Rainbow Room and we just feast afterwards because nobody eats before a show. And then, it was so great just to be able to perform live music and live comedy in that format again. So we stayed out until like 2-3 in the morning. And then I had a 7 a.m. flight. So I just stayed up.
Brutal.
And then I flew into New York and immediately had 3 shows. And then I got home around midnight and I ate some Raisinets and I went to bed.
Nice.
And that's what I did. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we were looking forward to this one because, I mean, there's certain comics that, I don't know, you sort of associate with music or knowing about, like you, Mark Maron, Bill Burr,
Jim
Dean Del Rey,
Florentine.
Florentine. There's a group there that seems to have know a little more about music and bands and stuff than the rest of them. So, like, we always ask when we
Well,
start.
hold on. This is JB. This is my co-host and music partner, guitar player. This is Josh Adam Meyers.
Nice to meet you, man.
What's up, buddy?
I wanted to ask you too, is your name like a Mark Paul Gossler situation where we call you Josh Adam, or do I call you Josh?
You call me Josh.
Okay.
The story is when I moved to Los Angeles in 2007, I worked it behind the scenes in television for a minute. I was working on Keeping Up with the Kardashians for 2 seasons as like a production assistant. And then I worked on this like reality porno for Playboy TV because I was just looking for any job. And then I was like, you know what? I moved out here to do comedy. That's what I'm going to do. And I went to, I don't know if you're familiar with Los Angeles, but Franklin Boulevard, there's this Gelson's right by this little spree of like 4 or 5 shops right on Franklin at the foot of the Hollywood Hills. And I pull into this parking lot and Bobby Lee is parked right next to me. Now, at the time, I was obsessed, and I think so many people were obsessed still with Curb Your Enthusiasm, and he played one of my favorite characters, that Korean bookie song. And I see him, and that's literally all I know him for. I'm like, oh my God, Bobby Lee. I was like, you're a comic, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, I want to be a comic too. So do you have any advice? And he goes, first of all, what's your name? And I go, Josh Myers. And he goes, you can't be Josh Myers. There's already a Josh Myers. It's Seth Meyers' brother. So you have to change your name. And then he said some other stuff too, which one of the things that I say this to all younger comics, if they want any advice, he just looked at me. He goes, you have to believe you're worth $1 million, and no one can ever get you to doubt that. You are worth millions. And if you don't believe that, then no one else will. And I was like, and that's stuck with me for so long. But then I had to change my name. So I had a moment where this was so embarrassing. For like 3 open mics, I was J Money. Yeah, dude. It didn't work out. By the way, I was terrible at stand-up at the time. So they were like, you're calling yourself J Money? And I was like, well, it's a work in progress. And then
Jim Florentine was jamming Jim for a while, he told us. So, everybody goes through a little of that, I guess.
It's so funny that I got literally last night, I was at the stand, and Jim and I were cool. But last night, me and him talked for like an hour and a half about different concerts that we were excited to see that have gotten canceled. And it was literally like a pissing match between each one. He'd be like, yeah, well, I was going to see, Rage Against the Machine in Madison Square Garden. And I was like, yeah, dude, but I was going to see Rage on Tom Morello's guest list in El Paso first show. But it was just back and forth. And we had so much fun. Here's the funny thing, the caveat to add to my name story, because that's just a long answer just to say that you can call me Josh. But the dude that is Josh Myers, it was, I said, Seth Meyers' brother on that 70s show. He did some other stuff. And dude, I get tagged in every single flyer this guy is in. I mean, I can't, any 90s nostalgia, like Instagram account, I'm getting tagged. I've gotten to the point now where I'm just like, I'm not him. I mean, please stop tagging me. I will report this. And then I saw him at a dog food store in Hollywood like 6 months ago. And he looked at me. He was like, are you Josh Adam Meyers? I was like, you're Josh Myers. And we just hugged because we had both knew how terrible this was. There's nothing worse than when people like tag you in something that's close, or it's just, yeah, man. So yeah, you could call me Josh.
If I called you Josh Adam, would you be okay with that?
Sure. It sounds cool.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm in.
Should we start? Yeah. So what is the first music you remember loving as a kid?
Like very first.
Very first.
Iron Maiden.
Wow.
Iron Maiden. We're talking about loving. We're talking about love, because there was always music that passed through my ecosystem at a super young age. I mean, obviously I could then say, because that was my first obsession band, because I was like 6 years old. I remember going into Sam Goody and seeing the Eddie poster and being like, oh my God, what is that? That's so cool. It was for like Power Slave or something. And I was just obsessed with Iron Maiden. Having never really listened to their music, just the brand that they had built was so cool. And I just bought into it. And then it was like, oh, off to the races, because there was so much great music. And I loved that hard rock. And I loved that, like, wah! Like I dug that. But honestly, if we're talking about the first song I ever loved, it was Head Over Heels by Tears for Fears, because my mom used to listen to whatever that hip station was in the Washington, D.C. area. And she would drive us to like, Hebrew school, or we'd go to the dentist or whatever doctor's appointment. And that's a song that just has stuck out. It's like one of my first memories of like music, being in the backseat of my mom's car and hearing Head Over Heels. And it still holds up. It's still just such a perfect song. But really the first obsession was Iron Maiden. And then shortly after that was Guns N' Roses.
So you grew up in the DC area?
Yeah, I'm from the Maryland side of the DC metropolitan area. Great area to grow up. There was, for one, just being in a place with so many race, cultures, and creeds. Like at a young age, I just was like, all right, that's a black guy, that's a Latino, that's an Asian. It was like you just knew. So nothing as I grew up, there was no culture that was like different for me, which I also think helped bring you into a stronger appreciation for all different types of music because you heard so much different music. You know, because there was a radio station for everything, and you know, I was so strictly like hard rock for most of my life until I heard Public Enemy and Two Live Crew when I was in middle school, and then I had my I Want to Be Black period, and that was when I like put the slash in my eyebrows, and I had like Vanilla Ice hair for like a short period of time.
Nice. Yeah, Public Enemy was, for a lot of us that grew up on the punk rock or hard rock, that was like one of the first rap bands where you listen to and like, holy shit, this is punk rock. They're just rapping and there's no guitars, but the attitude where they were coming from, you know, for me too, being a white kid from the suburbs, somehow it resonated with me too. I'm like, fuck, listen to these guys.
You know what's even funnier is, and this is so crazy because, you know, as I've started listening to like older country music, you're realizing that's just as punk rock or as hip hop as anything else. The stories that they're telling and their way of like, I mean, Loretta Lynn is just as like hardcore as Nas, like in what she's saying in her lyrics about her experience. And it's so cool. It's just, and I think that's why certain music just pushes through. It's because, oh, well, this is about my story just as much it's theirs. And it's also to people that don't experience that. They're like, oh, well, now I get to see this part of the world that I had no idea about. I had no idea that, you know, people were even dealing with the things they were dealing with.
Yeah, they were trying to cancel Loretta Lynn back in the day for the pill.
Yeah.
You know, they were boycotting her on radio stations, and that's some pretty punk rock stuff if you're getting
very punk rock.
She was so brave. She's one of my favorites.
And I think maybe that's what it is. There's sort of an attitude about people just are attracted to somebody that doesn't give a fuck and is doing what they're doing. Not a bad person, but, you know, it doesn't matter what kind of music's set behind it. Those people seem to rise to the top, you know, icon wise from any genre.
Oh, 100%. The realer you are, the more success you're gonna have. I say it even with stand-up comedy. It's like, if stand-up comedy is 95% just confidence and belief in who you are, and as long as you can just put yourself out there and just sit in the pocket of like, this is who I am, this is the stuff I'm going to talk about, the material means nothing. They have to like you. And if they get you and if they feel comfortable with you for the next 15 minutes to an hour, they're going to love it. Doesn't make a difference what you say. It's like, it's just like they say in football, it's 90% mental and 10% physical. It's the same thing. It's all about just, you know, confidence.
Yeah. So did you go see shows as a teenager in early 20s in DC? Were you there that long? Because I know a lot of great bands were coming through there.
Yes. I was very, very lucky because I grew up around one of the best music venues possibly in the world, which is the 930 Club.
I knew it was coming.
The 930 Club was this mecca of every single type of music and every single band that I wanted to see that was cool was always there. I mean, throughout, I would go at a certain point in my mid 20s, I'd say from like 22 until about 26, until I moved to Los Angeles, I was at the 930 Club at least once a month, sometimes multiple times. My dad never really took me to shows. He would, like, this is the funny thing, is like my dad would take me to go see and my mom to go see Peter, Paul, and Mary. I've seen Peter, Paul, and Mary like 15 times live, which is 14 times too many, you know? There's only so many times I can hear Puff the Magic Dragon. But I did get a kick out of, like, they would always, you know, they'd always be like, this song was written, you know, guys, back when we used to smoke grass, and all the old people were like, like nobody, they're all so dull now. But yeah, it was like, that was like the first couple concerts I had gone to. And then my first actual concert was my buddy Greg. His dad was really into Bruce Springsteen. And so was Greg. And at the time, I think I was like 12 or 13. And Greg's dad had an extra ticket and he was taking Greg. And so Greg was like, can I bring Josh? And I went, and I remember we're seeing it at the Capitol Center in Maryland, Landover, Maryland. And like I said, I only knew a few songs by him at that point, but man, it was just like so electric and just so, you know, even if you don't know Bruce Springsteen's music, it's the same thing with like the Beatles. Like if you went to go see Paul McCartney and you've really never, which I don't know how many people don't know Beatles songs, but you just get like infatuated with it. And so that was like the first real taste of like live music and live energy in live music that I had ever had. And so the second I could go to see live shows, I was just out all the time. I mean, starting in high school, I remember seeing Korn open for Orange 9mm because I was cool with like the hipster grunge kids, you know, and I don't know what we'd even classify them. Like they were listening to the Pixies and they were obsessed with like Morrissey.
Yep.
This girl Courtney and this other girl Eliza. I had such a crush on Eliza. She was so cool. She worked at a record store. Like she was the best, man. Kissed her once.
Oh,
I kissed her once.
Well done.
In front of the Black Cat, but that was it. But yeah, I think it's, you know, I didn't have a lot of friends that wanted to go see live shows. Most of my friends were, and I talk about this on stage right now. They were the kids that were my best friends from high school all listened and loved almost to the point of an obsession with 311. And I hate 311 because I don't feel white people should do reggae music. And now if you come see me live, I have a 10-minute joke about why white people shouldn't do reggae music. So
I agree.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Especially, and there's nothing wrong with 311, but when you hear them so much, it's to the point where I hate their music and I know every song lyric that they've ever done because it was just so like just punched in my face every day. Anytime I got into any of my friends' cars.
It's like an annoying commercial that you can't get out of your head.
Oh my God, it's 1-800-CARS-FOR-KIDS, just nonstop over and over and over again. Right. Yeah, but it was once I really, and I still do this now, which is go to see live shows by myself. I like that. I like being by myself. I'll go to sporting events by myself. I'll go to concerts because it's like trying to find somebody to go with you. And also sometimes people are like, I like to walk around. I go to shows and I I saw Slayer's last show and I'm not even a big Slayer fan, but I'm just walking through, looking at everybody, smoking some grass. Like, dude, this is fucking, oh my God, look at that dude. He's got his whole head is pierced. Like it's awesome. And there's so, you know it because you guys live in that world. Like there are some of the most interesting people in the world are in that music ecosystem. And I mean, strangest, funniest, coolest. And you really, when you go to these shows by yourself, you'll meet just the most incredible people if you just talk to them. So I've always been drawn to it.
Yeah, I wonder if it was like when I was coming up, you know, you go to see the arena shows, like go from AC/DC and then you go to the first show in that small, dingy punk rock show or like the 930 Club. That for me, like the second half of going to the small club and seeing a band, you're like, holy shit, this is something completely different and way more exciting because it's right up in there and, you know, right in your face. Love that as a young up and comer.
There was, certain shows that I've seen at 930 Club, that I've seen these bands on far bigger scales. Right. Like I saw Velvet Revolver's first show in DC as a band. And I mean, it was before the record came out. It was a collection of my two favorite bands growing up, which were Stone Temple Pilots, because Scott Weiland and Axl Rose are the two singers that have like really just molded me and my influence as a frontman with the goddamn Comedy Jam. I'm basically just doing a blatant ripoff of both of them because I love them so much. And so to have those two bands kind of come together and to go see them live, I mean, this is an arena act. These are rock stars. And they blew us away. And then funny thing, like 2 weeks later, I went to go see The Darkness. And I remember, dude, and then they just, I was like, how are they, this is the venue? Like they should be playing a fucking stadium. So what's great about the 930 Club is you would have these huge artists that would be playing an arena show and then they do a secret show at the 930 Club. And then I became friends with like the door guys there and they would give me the heads up that, you know, Radiohead's going to do, they just played Merriweather. They're going to do a secret show here later. And I would just be able to get in. I'd be there like at, 3 p.m., get my little pass. And that's what I'm telling you, man. Go by yourself, make friends with the door guys. You are good to go. Always.
Yeah.
So did you ever, were you ever in a band? Try to start a band?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. Well, I was in multiple. I've been one that's kind of funny that I talk about on stage. I was in an all Jewish hip hop group called Descheckles, which when Wu-Tang blew up, because being a kid from the suburbs, we were upset. There was something about Wu-Tang. I don't know what it was, other than just how cool they were. And maybe it was just all the mythology and the kung fu stuff. But Wu-Tang made white kids from the suburbs think they could rap, at least me and my buddies. And so we started making. It started with we had a Killa Army single that had like the track on it, and then it had the instrumental, and then me and my buddies were stoned in my bedroom in my parents' house, and we put it on, and then we figured out that you could take an old headphone and plug that into the mic like jack, and you could then use that headphone as a microphone. And we started rhyming over that beat, and we recorded it, and then we play it over and over. And then my buddy Paul came over, and he was like, dude, this is awesome. And then it started developing so slowly because there wasn't the technology that the kids have now where you can literally just make the whole beat on your computer, rhyme into a microphone, attach to your computer, edit it, mix it, do everything. I mean, we did this we had a boombox, we had a beat disc, and a Casio keyboard, and you would have to hold the microphone next to the speaker of the keyboard so they could get our vocals and the music we were playing. And we made, this is funny, we made 13 albums in about 7 weeks.
You guys are prolific, man.
Prolific. No one's ever heard it. I actually have every album. I think they're all right there. They're all on cassette. They're on top of one of my cabinets in my kitchen.
You got to put that out.
I'm gonna figure something out. It's terrible, guys.
Maybe a best of, if nothing else.
We already did that. We did that. That was the last thing we did. We made Descheckles dank hits, and we really, really took our time with it, placing the songs. Like, oh, we got to open with Buddha Tributa, then go into Sergeant Buddha's Smoky Bong Club Band. It was all weed. Dude, it was just like a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids rapping about trying to get laid, smoking pot, and it was terrible. But then I went ahead and at my friend's bachelor party a few years later, I got Descheckles tattooed. So I got a D here and I got an S here on the other arm to represent Descheckles. And I'm at this is really funny. I'm at this. Do you guys remember a music festival in Silver Lake called Sunset Junction?
Oh yeah.
So Sunset Junction was like they shut down Sunset Boulevard and basically they'd have these great bands. I saw Antibalas there, George Clinton was there, Black Keys, Cold War Kids, and this is one year that I'm there and I'm like high and I'm just having the best time ever. And I'm walking to one of the stages and I see these two gay guys holding hands walking, and one of them has the D and the S tattooed in the exact same spots on his body that I have on mine. And so I'm like, holy shit, dude. I was like, I just got to go connect with this guy. I'm all stoned. I was like, yeah. And I walk up to the dude and I'm like, hey, man, sorry to bother you. But, dude, I have the same D and S tattooed on my body that you have on yours. I was just, what does yours stand for? And he goes, dick sucker. Oh. And he's like, well, what do yours stand for? And I'm like, oh, well, mine stands for Descheckles, which was this all Jewish hip hop group I was in the late 90s. And he goes, that is gay. And then he just walks off. So, but I was in Descheckles, and in high school I was in like some garage bands, and I had a great group of guys that I linked up with early, and we would start something and then it would fall apart. And then probably around 22, 23, me, my friend Ben, my friend Tassos, and my buddy Chris started this band. And for a moment, we were like a thing. We were called LED. We were playing like the bar circuit around Montgomery County, Maryland, into Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Wrote a few songs. It was so much fun. But, I mean, as you guys know, for being in a band, everybody needs to be on the same page. You guys all have to be like, this is what we're going to do, and nothing's going to stop us. And unfortunately, Ben was getting married and wanted to have a family. And Tassos was kind of in and out of it because he was also had a real job. It was just me and this dude, Chris. And then, it just kind of fizzled. And we played some great shows, man. We played some really great shows. We played the Black Cat a few times in DC. I mean, who knows what could happen? I mean, also though, I like to look at it like maybe that just wasn't my destiny because it's all worked out, you know, in the end. And I've been able to really do both. And then the guys that I play with now, LMNOP, are just dudes that I met, you know, at this random stand-up comedy show at this theater on Seward in the theater district of Hollywood. And we just hit it off. And they're two of the most talented musicians I've ever met that just never blew up. And I just always kept in touch with them. And the second I came up with the idea for the jam, it was like I had to call them. It's like they're family. And it's like so cool too to see these two guys that are just, you know, really just bar show musicians play these. I mean, we played Madison Square Garden twice, like empty, but still we played MSG. Yeah, we played MSG. We played like Gramercy. We played 15,000 at Just for Laughs in Montreal. And they're just they're like such great dudes. And so would I say that we're officially a band? No, but man, it's just like there's no other guys I'd ever want to play with.
You're also as active as a lot of bands, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So how did you?
No, I want to. Are you writing songs now still? I mean, I know you wrote the Glitter and Garbage theme song. When did you get into the theme song game?
I didn't. That is literally, you know. All right, so the pandemic hit. I don't know if you guys heard.
No, what's that?
There's this thing called Corona. I like to say it like I'm from Philadelphia. Coronavirus. Corona. And so it drops in March, and I was so bored. And so you're dicking around online, and I found this app called Voicey, which is basically like TikTok or Instagram for singers, where you pick a beat, and there's like thousands of different beats. It's VOSIEY, I think, or VOISEY. And you pick a beat, and you can pick anything. They've got everything. You got from slow R&B to like techno to this to that, and then you sing into like a headphones like hooked up to the jack of your iPhone, and then you can, after you're done recording, and it only gives you like a minute, you know, but it gives you like different sections. So you'll get 16 measures, and then it'll be another 16, and then usually it's only about 32 measures, but you'll be able to sing, and then you can add effects on it. And I just became obsessed with it, where I started writing all of these like really funny songs, and then I started like posting a little bit of them. Some got a little bit of traction. I mean, like a few people, but for the most part, it was just for something for me to do to have fun. And literally, I was like the only white guy on the app. It was like all like Black women, Black soul singers, and then me, you know, coming up. And I loved it. I had such a good time. And so when my friend Justine and Justin were starting this podcast, they asked, because I had been sending them the songs, if I could write a theme song. I wrote that theme song in literally 8 seconds.
Yeah, that's how that's how it works.
It just came out, and then I was like, all right.
Head. It gets stuck in my head.
Well, that's what happens when the classics are written. They just come to you.
Yeah.
You know, you don't sit down and write.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Classics, exactly.
Yeah.
It is a classic.
I mean, pop culture stuff is the best line ever.
If you go to the end of it, it goes, it's like Justin and Justine, glitter and garbage. I want to do a bumper speed. Oh, I know they cut that part out, but that's how it ends. That's how it ends. I'm proud of that line. Nobody gets to hear that one, but that's the one that I'm like, yeah, man.
Those fucking censors, they got him again.
Yeah, dude, the man is keeping me down. I feel like Jim Morrison on the Ed Sullivan Show.
The Sex Pistols of the theme song game.
Yeah, just so rock and roll. Speed.
So how did you get to comedy from music?
Who was the first comedian you loved? And then how did you get to comedy?
First comic I really loved, man, there was a guy, and it's this random special called, his name was Bob Nelson, and he had an HBO special called Nelson Schmelson. And he played all these different characters, and it was really funny. And this guy never really he did a few movies, but he never had like a huge career. maybe in the 80s. I don't know. It was just so early. And I remember seeing that and like being obsessed with that. Now, that's not what I wanted to make me a stand-up comic. When I wanted to be a stand-up comic, when I saw my dad watching Comic Relief at about, I think I was like 6 years old, and my dad was watching the Carlin set from Comic Relief, and he was doing the really famous bit, "My stuff is stuff, your stuff is shit." And it's just this brilliant bit, and one of his most famous. And I remember watching my dad watch that and seeing my dad laugh and being like, what is that? Because my dad always showed me the greats at a very young age. I mean, we were watching Mel Brooks movies, Woody Allen movies. He was also, he introduced me to jazz and Miles Davis and the Beatles and, books, just everything. My dad was very, very cultured. And so I wanted to just do anything just to have my dad kind of like think I was cool. So if my dad was obsessed with jazz, I started digging on jazz. And my dad was into Mel Brooks, I was digging on it. So when I saw my dad into stand-up, I was like, well, that's what I want to do. Now, I was already like a funny kid and making kids laugh, but I was just drawn to music because music was just easier.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds weird, but I mean, you guys know it as musicians, like either you have the feel or you don't. Some people are just born with it. When you come in on the song, you don't even have to know. You just hear it and go, okay, I can do this. Or you can fiddle around on a piano and match the sound. And I always was able to do that at a young age, whether it was with guitar or piano. So I just started playing music and I'd come home from school every day and I'd sing into the mirror. I'd put on like Iron Maiden or Guns N' Roses or Skid Row or whatever I was listening to. And I would just sing into a hairbrush. And that was what I wanted. That was the dream. But I never stopped thinking about playing music. Not playing music, doing comedy. And as I got older, it just kind of, the music thing, I tried it out. It was fun. I wanted to do it. It just was so hard to work with a band. And and I would write songs, but it just never went anywhere. And I never really put everything into it. And so it wasn't until like my mid to late 20s, I was doing cocaine one night. So it's how it always happens.
Good stories start this way.
I was doing cocaine and I was making some people laugh at this house party in Baltimore. And somebody goes, dude, are you a comic? And I was like, well, I want to be. And the guy was like, he's like, dude, you should do it. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And so what did I do? I went home that night and I snuck up to my parents' like computer room and I found like where an open mic was. And then 2 days later, with no material written, I just went to an open mic and just ate shit, just a shit sandwich. But here's the thing is that you don't know you have nothing to judge it to. So you actually think you do pretty good. Do you know what I mean? Like you have no idea. You just did it. It doesn't make a difference if you bombed or you didn't. It's just you did it. You got over that fear of wanting to go up there and do it. And then I went back the next week and I basically just did like a blatant Dane Cook ripoff and the guy called me out for it. And then I didn't go back until I started in Los Angeles. But that's the thing is that George Carlin set and seeing Chris Rock Bring the Pain or seeing Dave Chappelle Killing Me Softly or Martin Lawrence You So Crazy or even Nelson Schmelson by Bob Nelson, those specials just and how I laughed stuck out. And it was just this thing that I was like, this is what I want to do because I know I have something to say. I have a different perspective than I think a lot of people. And it just kind of happened. And then once I got to Los Angeles, and I found my group when I started doing open mics, it was off to the races because it's like, oh, I've got my family now. I've got guys that are going to support me. And then I remember August 1st, 2008, I was like, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. And I've basically just been committed to it ever since.
That's a trip. So your last show around the DC area, somebody told you were a Dane Cook ripoff. And then you're like, well, fuck it. I can do this and move to Los Angeles. Like, what was the thought process there? Because that's a pretty ballsy move.
Well, and I kind of see Bobby reiterated it when he said you're worth $1 million. I've always known that what I'm good at, and I'm good at entertaining people. I'm an entertainer. The best jobs I've ever had are the only jobs that I've ever been able to keep that were in the world of like, I don't want to call it like just regular people jobs. I was a bar mitzvah wedding DJ for 7 years, and I was like the most requested because I have so much energy and I just bounce off the walls. I'm constantly like, I have restless leg syndrome because I have so much energy. And when I was trying to wait tables, I keep getting fired from that. But bar mitzvah wedding DJ, private party DJing, I was great at. And then I moved to Los Angeles and I start waiting tables again. And once again, I get fired. And then somebody says, you should be a strip club DJ. And I was like, all right. I was like, I've never wanted to work in that world. But I find a job. And the next thing you know, they want me to work weekends. And they're like, you're the best strip club DJ we've ever had. And I'm making jokes. So it's just talking and entertaining is what I know I'm good at. And stand up, even when I sucked, because we all do at the beginning, I knew my potential. You know, it's the same thing with music. It's like, I know my potential. I know that if I work at it, and I'm an obsessive person. So when it's something I want, that's all I think about. It could be like, I'm going to buy this new dresser for my new apartment. And until I pick out that dresser and it gets sent to me, that's all I think about. And maybe that's just being an addict as well. But when it became stand-up comedy and I got that first taste of laughter, I was like, I know I can do this. I remember doing a show. So truth be told, I was very, very doubtful, yet knowing once again that this is what I wanted, but still the comics that I started with were two guys that are geniuses. One is Gerard Carmichael and the other is a comic that passed away named Angelo Bowers, who's the funniest human being I've ever met in my life. And they always say, surround yourself around people that make you laugh. Like you don't want to be the funniest person in your group. You want to be around people that will make you better. And I remember after like about 2 months of doing stand-up comedy here in Los Angeles, I had met a good group of comics, and they were doing this show at the Hollywood Improv that Rita, the GM at the time, who's also like a talent developer, kind of picked, because she used to watch the open mics, and she picked kind of the best of the open mic. And I was the last comic that she put on the show because I was definitely the greenest out of everybody. I had basically just started. And packed house on a Sunday night, best of the open mic. This is our big shot for most of us, our first real set at the Hollywood Improv. And everybody ate shit. Everybody except for me. Wow. And I went up and I was just having so much fun. Now, I also, truth be told, I was also on about 25 Vicodin ES. So I felt no pain.
Right.
I was sitting in the pocket. But I killed, and I never say I killed. I killed that show. And when I got off, all those comics that were kind of like didn't know about me or weren't really sure if I could do this were all like, no, you can do this. Yeah, and you get that taste, and then I bombed the next 6 sets after that. But it's like, that you're capable of clicking into that audience. So that's all it's ever been. And generally what brought me to New York right now, which is I got to the point after 14 years of living in Los Angeles, and I love LA. Don't get me wrong, man. I love this. I love LA so much. I love everything about it. It helped me, become a better person, find happiness through all the stuff that people make fun of LA about, the manifestation, the meditation and all that stuff, the crystals. I mean, I got 2 crystals right here, man. It looks like crystal meth. It's just, there's actual crystals. I've been talking about.
Clarify here.
Yeah. Just so everybody knows, it's not. But this is the thing, man, is that I only moved away from LA because I couldn't reach my potential there as a performer. But I could come to New York and I could do, I had 3 shows last night. I have 4 tonight. I have 2 the next night. The weekends, I've got like usually 5 to 7 shows because that's all I want to do. Because now that I've gotten that taste of it, now that I know that I'm good enough, it's like, I know that the only way that I'm going to get to reach my potential is just to go up nonstop. and it's groovy, man. I love it out here.
Did you do a bunch of road work in Los Angeles? Or because I know from New York, we've talked to people about it, it's way easier to tour out of New York because you can drive, you're within 10 hours of a lot of places. And in Los Angeles, you're out there. I mean, there's California, but it takes a long time to get anywhere from California. So did you do a bunch of road stuff when you were in Los Angeles?
I mean, you have Vegas that's 3 hours away. You have San Francisco, which is 5, and then you have these little markets that are like Bakersfield, and you can go to Irvine, you can go to Brea. There is far more around here because you have Boston, Connecticut. Every state has its own little so in some states have like 3 or 4 markets. Like Pennsylvania's got Philly, it's got Harrisburg, it's got Pittsburgh. And so I mean, we make it work with what we have in Los Angeles, and there's not enough. So you just have a bunch of people that are out there hustling, and a lot of them don't even really want to be comics. They just want to be famous. And so they're taking up spots from actual comics. And that's all I want to do is stand-up comedy. I mean, the other stuff is all just sweetener to help make some more money. And because I do love writing movies, or I do want to direct, or I do want to do this, or I do want to act, but the primary focus is stand-up. And if you want to be an artist as a comic and really grow, I just think there's no place better than New York, where this is the art form. This is where it basically started, and where some of the greats, they've all worked here, and then they go to LA. See, I did it the opposite way. I went to LA first, and the fact that I've even gotten remotely funny and been able to do half the shit that I've been able to do is all just because of just sheer pushing through and just working my ass off. But I think that if you really want to be able to make money just doing stand-up comedy in like a 3-hour drive kind of radius, you have to be here.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it seems, I don't know, I was thinking about this the other day, even like LA-based podcasts and New York-based podcasts, there's stuff that these guys can't say on their LA-based podcasts. It doesn't really make any sense because they all are nationwide or worldwide. But I hear things said on like Legion of Skanks that nobody would say on certain other podcasts without bleeping, but they never get any blowback from it. So I don't know if it has something to do with where you're located, or maybe that they're not worried about
they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, that worried about other things coming. But it just seemed funny watching the two different coasts.
Because they're both woke, New York and
but you can say the new.
What are your thoughts on it?
Well, the Legion of Skanks can kind of do whatever they want because
that's probably not a good example. Yeah,
they control their market. They control their audience. They don't need. They have sponsors, but those fans of Legion of Skanks will follow them anywhere. They're big enough to do a festival. They could probably do a cruise if they want to do and sell it out every year. And their fans are great. I listen, I don't agree with every single thing that they say, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be allowed to say it. We should be allowed to say whatever we want to say, even if that's the whole thing. If Nazis want to say shit, they should be able to say shit. If like the Ku Klux Klan wants to say shit, they should be able to say shit. Doesn't mean that they're right. It doesn't mean that it should be broadcast. But if that's freedom of speech in this world, and that's the one thing that sets us apart from every other nation, is that we have that First Amendment right. Mm-hmm. And regardless if you agree with something or not, it's allowed, because you can't get in trouble. Lenny Bruce fought for it. Larry Flint fought for it. It's all these guys that have really pushed through. And for the Skanks, is it a New York thing? Maybe. I don't know if I would say that, there aren't people in LA that are saying the same stuff, but I think you touched on it, Raylan, is that LA it's very progressive. Like, it's too progressive to the point now where it's almost eating itself. Do you know what I mean? And you could go to a show in Los Angeles and you could say something that 4 years ago was fine, but now you can't. But it's like, you're not saying it to be mean. You're just making a joke, and the whole audience could turn on you. And in New York, I'm not saying that won't happen here. There's just a better chance of that happening in Los Angeles. And I think you both know from both being in both of those places before that New York is just a realer town. You just have people that are, you're in the shit with everybody else, whether you're a billionaire or the poorest guy in the world. Once you leave your apartment building, you're in it with everybody else. And I think that might harden you so you can say certain things and or at least receive it and not be so like offended by it, because Los Angeles, everybody, it's such an isolation city. The majority of people are seeing each other online, and that's where most of the arguments start because they're in their own little bubbles. But New York, like I said, man, everybody's in this together. I don't know. I mean, that's a really good point. I think LA is good for a lot of great things, but New York definitely has just a harder candy shell. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. We should probably get into the goddamn comedy jam.
Oh yeah, let's ask about that. Tell us about the.
How did that whole start?
So all right. So I mentioned earlier about this theater in Los Angeles called the Unknown Theater. And I was a first year comic. Actually, I was like probably in my first like 2 or 3 months of doing stand up. And I got asked to come hang at this theater, the Unknown Theater. And there was a comedy show there every Sunday night. And the theater was run by this guy named Chris Kovacs. That was just an artist, man. All he cared about was like, I want artists to push through. I want them to try something different and just be themselves and have no fear of falling, just whatever you can do. And his plays were super weird and just out there, and most of the time pretty crappy, but like they were just, but he always built these immaculate sets. And so we would do stand-up comedy at this show, and we'd be performing every other month would be a different play. So we'd be playing on a different set. And it was great because one day it would be like a bathhouse, and the next thing you know, it would be a resort. And then the next thing you know, we'd be up on this high like stage that's overlooking it was just a beautiful theater. And the guy was spending so much money on these plays that eventually the place went under. But we had about a 2-year run to do this comedy show. And after the show, the place became a speakeasy where all the comics in the area, all the cool ones, would come to drink for $5. It was $5 all you could drink beer.
Oh, wow.
And Chris, like I said, who was always about, you know, people loved art, whatever it was, he would pull out a drum set. And then he'd pull out an amp, and some of the comics then started bringing instruments and they started jamming. And being that I was a far better musician and singer at the time than I was comic, I kind of just jumped up there and kind of was the conductor. And I started singing with all these different comics, and we would do covers of whatever. We do, like Chris Porter would show up and we'd do some Allman Brothers, and then Burr would show up and play drums, and we would do AC/DC, and then I'd do Radiohead or whatever it was. And then the two girls that were running that comedy show, Lara Valdivia and Sarah Tiana, dropped the show, and then me and another comic took it over, and it was their idea to have LMNOP, the band that I play with now, come in as a house band, where so the band, me and the band would open the show, we do a musical number, I'd intro the show, then we bring the comics up, and then the band would act as the light for the comics, where when the band walked back out on stage, the comic knew he had about 2 minutes left to wrap up his set. But I started noticing, guys, that the comics loved having the band up there and would end their sets always by doing something musical. And the crowd would go bananas for it because they would either sing a cover song or they'd make up a song on the spot with the band. And it was great. And so I had this idea about doing a show called, which the guitarist Joel came up with the name, the goddamn Comedy Jam, because he said it sounded like the Catalina wine mixer. He's like, it just sounds good.
Yeah, it does.
And so I had this idea. I go, comics do stand up, and then they sing a song with the band. And then I kind of was like, oh, and they should probably explain why they chose the song, so they'll tell a story after their set about why they picked the song. Well, I sat on that idea for years, man. And then in 2014, I had some success in Los Angeles. I got New Faces at Just for Laughs, which is like a big deal as a young comic, where they pick like 18 comics and they're like, these are going to be the next big things. And a lot of the greats have gotten this, and I got it in 2013. But generally your career and your life changes after you get it. But for me, nothing really happened. I was just, because everybody was like, we don't know what to do with you. You sing in your act. You're kind of dirty. Like, we just have no idea where to place you. So I'm like, I'm going to move to New York. And I'm getting everything in order to move to New York. And then this guy comes up to me. He's like, "Hey man, he's like, I just really love like what you do." He's like, "I'd love to do a show with you. Do you have any ideas for like a stand-up show?" And I go, "Well, I got this one idea." And he's like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest idea. We should do it." And I'm like, it'll never work. There's so much great stuff here in Los Angeles. Like, it's hard to get people to come. And I go, let me sit on it for a few days. And then the next day I'm at the Hollywood, the Comedy Store. And Bill Burr is on stage and he gets off and people are like going up to him being like, "You're so great. You're so great. That was so funny." And he sees me and he makes a beeline over to me and he's like, "Josh," he's like, "Dude, I've been playing drums again. We should jam like we used to do at the Unknown." And I go, "Well, I got this show idea." And I pitch him the show and he goes, "Oh my God, I love that." He goes, "I tape my special in June, set it up for July." And then 3 days later, I'm out looking for venues and I stumble into the Lyric Theater, which was on La Brea. And I go in and I say, "Hey, I got this show idea." And they're like, "Yeah, well, we don't really take on outside produced shows." And I go, "Well, I have Bill Burr." And they're like, "When do you want to do it?"
Right.
And then we set up the first one, July 21st, 2014. We didn't charge anybody anything. And we said, "You just got to sign up for tickets." And we dropped the lineup, which had Sickler on it. I know you know Ryan
Yay.
Sickler,
Yeah.
Jay Larson, Matt Bronger, and Bill Burr. It literally, we got all the signups, I think 180 signups within 5 minutes. And we do the first show. And I remember we end the show. And like everybody in the audience, and it was completely sold out, like 200 people, way more than were supposed to be in that theater, charged the green room. And you could just see like their eyes just like, "Holy shit, man, dude, that was one of the best shows I've ever seen." And we were all partying in the green room and Burr's hanging out and Sickler and everybody's just having the best time. And then we go to set up the next show. And next thing I know, like half of the industry in Hollywood's there. And I go, "Oh," I was like, "We got something."
Yeah.
And then it's been off to the races ever since. And it's just, using that band and using great comics. I mean, it, man, like there's something really beautiful about performing music on stage, like with a live band and the crowd being into it. And comics are, stand up is one thing and they go up there and they kill, but it's like, this is a show that makes them nervous,
Mhm.
It brings back a
Mhm.
feeling that they haven't experienced in years, man. And we've just been really lucky. It's like I just have so much fun doing it, and the band is so good. And it's really what it is. It's like, and I say this all the time, is like I owe Bill Burr so much for my career because he does that first show, and then he does the second show, and because he did that, and he dressed up. Like he dressed up like John Bonham the first show. He dressed up like Tommy Lee the second show. I can send you guys photos because they're if you want to put, because your fans would love to see. They're hilarious. And because he did that, every big comic from that point on was like, "Oh, well, if Burr's gonna do it, then I have to do it." So then getting anybody from that point on was easy. It was like Sarah Silverman and Louis C.K. and we've had Chappelle do it and Kevin Hart, and everybody has done the show. And we just put so much love into it that it's great, dude. This is the craziest shit, man, because we just did one, like I was saying about we did the goddamn Comedy Jam at the Store on Monday night. And me and the band like get off stage and we go to Canners and we're sitting around. At this point, that was our 7-year anniversary of doing the show.
Wow.
First time doing it though, like really live in that capacity in about almost 2 years because of the virus. And I remember I look at Joel and I'm just like, he looks at me, he's just like, "This show just will not die. Like people love this show."
Yeah.
And it's like, just when we think it's like, we're going to stop doing it because I'm getting too busy, or, the Roxy we'd fill it, but we'd have to do it like once every 2 or 3 months so we could really like sell it out. Cause it was such a big venue.
Right.
And it's an expensive night. And I got that, but it's just, the show won't die. It will not die. People love it. The festival market like is gearing up again. And we've played Bonnaroo. We actually did the Wild West Comedy Fest. We did Exit in Nashville.
Oh, wow.
We did 2 nights there. We've done, like I said, we just, it's this show that, and I think it's like when you put love into something and you stay out of the results, you just go, this is going to be fun. I love it. Let's just have fun. It's going to succeed. You're going to have a great time doing it, because when you start thinking about what you're going to get out of it or what you want, it's never going to happen, because you're always going to be disappointed. And I only did this show to honor my friend Angelo, who passed away, who told me to do this. And it's been this extension of just who I am. And when I go up there, it's literally just me with Angelo hanging out, jamming. And it's the most fun ever. And I mean, I keep saying I'm going to keep doing it until I don't look cool doing it. You know, I'm 41 now.
You got plenty of more years.
I think so.
Definitely.
I think so. But I'm throwing my body around a lot. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
We have an idea we wanted to run by you. We were thinking that maybe what if we got like Brad Paisley and Carrie Underwood and my grandpa, who else?
Are you talking about the
the karaoke comedy idea?
I was thinking the last podcast, it popped out while we were talking. I was like, what if you did karaoke but with comics? So you had a bunch of classic bits all down and somebody has to pick a bit.
But it has to be a famous singer that karaoke's a famous comics story or set. Like The Machine. Like, say somebody does Burt Kreischer's. Brad Paisley does Burt Kreischer's The Machine.
I will watch this 100%. It's a phenomenal idea. Don't know if it will work.
Probably not.
But if we put a lot of love into it and we have a great time.
Then that's all that matters. As long as we have a great time, that's all that matters. Dude, here's the funny thing, too. If you got the list of people that you just mentioned and you had them go up and do that and the audience was in on it, it doesn't make a difference how they do. It's just like, as long as they commit. There's a show they do here in Los Angeles, and they do it in New York too, called Trick or Treat, Shtick or Treat. And it's where other comics, younger comics, dress up like another comic, and they go up and do famous bits around Halloween.
Oh, that's fun.
And
cool.
and it's great. And it's like, dude, it's none of it's like, perfect, but it's just everybody's having such a good time, they could give a shit.
Yeah.
So
I think it's so funny that we cover all kinds of musicians' songs, but we never cover
Can't cover a comic.
cover a comic.
Cover comic.
can't cover comedy. Well, I would love to see Carrie Underwood do some Wanda Sykes bits.
Or maybe some Richard Pryor.
Oh yeah, dude.
The early stuff.
Yeah, dude.
Uncensored.
Like Reba do Lenny Bruce or
There
something.
you go.
Like, you guys hear Carrie Underwood's getting canceled for that comedy karaoke show?
He got canceled like 15 times in 12 minutes.
12 minutes. God, she was so offensive. All right. New song's great.
Okay, we won't keep you too much longer, but what your instrument, the one that you play the most is guitar? What is your instrument?
I guess so. I what sucks is I sold my guitars to move out here. I just got rid of everything. So I got to grab something. I got to get something just to noodle around with. I'm a noodler.
Yeah.
I'm a noodler. I'm like, I pick up a
play the
guitar.
drums?
I play the drums. If I had some lessons, I could be a drummer.
We're
Like
always,
I had the feel, man. I have
we're
the
always looking
feel.
for a drummer. So Raylan tried to get
Yeah.
Bill Burr on
I
something.
did try
but-
to get Bill Burr to drum on our last single, but he didn't respond. But maybe you would want to drum on our next single.
I'll drum on your next single. He's way better than I am, though. So your single's suddenly going to lose beat at about the 2-minute mark, and then I'll
fix
catch
that
back
later.
up.
Digitally.
We'll go in the computer and fix that.
Okay, good. Good.
We
good,
got
good.
4 great bars here. We'll just stretch that out. Here we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. You know what's funny is I've been always able to figure out instruments. I was at home for like 4 months with my nieces during November to March, which got me to move here. Actually, I was on the East Coast because they shut down LA, and my niece played violin. And I just started watching her, and I was like, oh, I always wanted to play one, but I never had one. And by the 3-month mark, I was noodling. I was getting like, I at least figured out how to like do it and how to hold it. And I just think that there are certain people, and I'll put myself in there, that just have that ear and they understand music enough to be able to figure stuff out. If you give me a piccolo or a trombone, like I will figure it out. I wish my parents would have had more money and would have been able to recognize that at a younger age to like really get me more into lessons. Because it would have I don't know. It's like I kind of had to learn everything on my own. And if I could have had actual instruction, like there's like I want to be able to solo on guitar so bad, and I'm just so bad at it because nobody's taught me, and I just need like just a couple lessons, just a couple.
Or learn to read tab. You know, tablature.
You don't want to learn to read. Just go on YouTube.
Tablature's pretty.
You figure it out.
I can understand some
you-
tablature. I understand some.
Yeah,
Like
that's the only way I can kind of do those things. Is just by reading tab. You know.
Well, I mean, what about you? I mean, were you just? I mean, obviously, music's been in your life forever. I mean, did you like? Did they force music upon you, or did you just
not at
start?
all.
You just started noodling.
I wanted to do it. And I'm not a great guitar player or anything. I write great songs.
Here it is. You're like, I sneeze and hits come out.
Hey, that's from Dig, right?
Yeah, Dig.
Yep. Yeah.
That's one of the greatest rock and roll documentaries I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Dude, I remember seeing that and being like, I mean, like I knew of the Dandy Warhols and they rule, but the Brian Jonestown Massacre is one of the most underrated bands that I've ever, dude, like there's like 45 albums of theirs to listen to and every album's different and every album's so good. And then to know that Anton is that batshit crazy.
Yes, it's legit. That's the best thing.
Is legit. It just adds to the lure. So yeah, dude.
Yeah. Okay. When's the first time you remember hearing about my grandpa, Willie Nelson, and what's your own personal Papa Willie story?
First time I heard about him. I mean, he was just always there, man. You know, he's just there. Like he's this mythical legend of rock and roll and country. And just, you know, I remember, I think maybe like the Muppets or something. It might have been like my earliest.
Yeah, that's somebody else said. John Heffron, maybe.
Yeah, he was just there, man. But I mean, realistically, when I was like, he's the coolest dude alive, was when he was in Half Baked.
Yeah.
You know, because that was when you're like, oh, he smokes pot too.
Yeah.
And I smoke pot. And like, you just think you always connect with anybody when you're 18 years old and you find out somebody famous smokes pot. You're like, this is the greatest dude in the world. Like we do the same shit. But really the thing that really made me fall in love with him was hearing his cover of Stardust, which is my favorite song of all time. That's like over the years, that's become my number one cry song. Mm-hmm. Specifically the Nat King Cole one. But when your dad, by that point, I had already loved that song. And I was DJing a party in the early, I don't remember exactly when. It had to be in the mid to early 2000s. And somebody on their like playlist put your grandfather's Stardust on there. And it was like just such a beautiful song. And especially hearing it with his voice and knowing what he's been through, it just adds a different depth to it and weight. And so, yeah, man, he's the coolest.
Yeah. You're the coolest, Josh Adam. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for doing this with us today. This was great.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad this worked out, guys. Anytime. And also, like, we got to jam together. We got to hang.
Next time you come to Nashville, you got to let us know. We got a spot. We can jam.
Let's write a song and record it.
We can record it.
Make a video in 2 hours. Let's do it.
I'm in. This was so great, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, man. We'll be in touch.
Josh Adam Meyers is my favorite comedian.
He's hilarious. I love that guy. Yeah. Anyway, if you like our podcast, please subscribe.
Hey, everybody DM Josh Adam Meyers and tell him we should play Skankfest.
Yes, tell him we should play Skankfest.
Enjoy your groceries.
I know your mama's name.
Don't be an asshole.
I think I read today we freed Britney.
We did?
Seriously.